Hello, welcome back. And as always, I thank you for tuning in here today. We're going to talk about something that we just don't realize most of the time. And even when someone like this pixelated image on your screen tells you that it's all in your mind, we don't want to believe that. And we'll talk about why and why we should start to realize that it is all in our mind, all of it. That's where the action lies. If you're new to A Course in Miracles, welcome. It's a self-study curriculum that's a course in mind training. Isn't that exciting? If you were looking for something else, this is not that thing. Still watching? Good. It's your inner teacher that's got you watching this. In fact, it's your inner teacher that has you on the spiritual path in the first place. So, what we think here as we identify with an ego is that everything is outside us. We think this assemblage of water and bone and cartilaginous tissue and some guts and stuff. We think this is us. So, assuming that, we believe that, well, we're an ego. We believe we're a separate unit, an individual, and that everyone else is their own separate individual. And we're all separate and divided. Which, fast forward to the real heart of the matter, is not true. It's a simple mistake because there is no separation of any kind. We're not separate from our brother. We're not separate from God. There's no separation. So, because we've made the mistake of assuming that there is and appearing to assume this form, which we call Homo sapiens sapiens, a collection of sounds, which is, of course, not who we really are. Presuming all this, we think that the world is outside of us. We think that this organism is the center of the known universe, and we, well, behave accordingly, don't we? We can't stand the prick of a pin, and anything, positively anything, that makes us even the slightest bit uncomfortable or inconveniences us in any way, even slightly, is intolerable. And we throw a fit, whether we act out or not, we're throwing it in our mind. So when people of various spiritual traditions, not just this course, but many of them, say that honesty is required on the spiritual path, it is. They're absolutely right. This is what we're talking about, is being able to take a look at what's really going on. Because how can anyone expect you, or anyone else for that matter, to solve a problem unless you're aware of it? If you're completely unaware of it, well, you might be blissfully unaware of it sometimes, but you're painfully unaware of it most of the time because we experience these mad fluctuations in our lives between high highs and low lows, often within the same 5 to 10 second period. So that if you feel exhausted or overwhelmed, that makes sense. We overwhelm and exhaust ourselves. So, something that we don't want to realize, really, but we need to. And because we need to, there's a part of you that does deep down want to pay attention to this message today. It's in our mind, all of it. There's nothing outside you. There's nothing outside you. I'm well aware that not every spiritual tradition says that in the same words, very directly. There is nothing outside you. So let's spend a few minutes talking about what we even mean by that. When we identify with the ego, and the ego being this false sense of an individual self with which we identify, we give it a collection of sounds that we refer to as a name and things like that. So when we identify with an ego, we attack ourselves. So we're deprived, we're poor in a sense, we're a very real sense, because we're simply mistaken and we feel deprived. Everyone who identifies with the ego is deprived and they feel deprived. They're upset 1 minute, blissfully happy, experiencing possible orgasmic bliss to the nth degree 1 minute, and then extraordinary regret the next. Wild fluctuation, like we've been talking about. When we do this, we feel deprived. We've exchanged self love for self hatred. We're attacking ourselves, and we don't realize it. When you identify with an ego, what naturally follows is suffering. It's this round of highs and lows, and sometimes very low lows, and sometimes a prolonged period of lows. And even the highs don't last. A beautiful candlelit dinner comes to an end. You end up getting up from the table, even if it's after several hours, because inevitably you've got to go to the bathroom and the wine runs out. That gorgeous Bordeaux, for example, that you opened runs out because you drink it all. Nothing in this world lasts. The pleasures don't last, and the painful crap doesn't last either, which should cheer you. Maybe it doesn't right now, and I get it, but that doesn't last either. And you do know this, or you would not be interested in spirituality. And there's plenty of other stuff out there to occupy our attention. So we're attacking ourselves when we identify as an individual, and we don't realize it. So let's realize it. That's what this video is for, so that you may begin to realize it if you've not yet. If you have, then we all need a refresher, because it doesn't make any difference if you've been following this course routinely for decades or whether you've never picked it up. This message is equally valid. We're invited, especially as experienced learners, to come to the table, so to speak, with something that is known in Zen Buddhism as a beginner's mind. Beginner's mind assumes nothing. This is taking a posture of not presuming to know everything because you've been there, done that, because you've been through the workbook once or twice or 10 times, because you've read something. Beginner's mind is a blank slate. We're invited to bring this blank slate and give it over to our inner teacher, the Holy Spirit, and let him write on it. Yeah, let him doodle and draw on our blank slate. See how you feel. See what happens if you really do that. And only you'll know if you really, truly, honestly do it. There's that word again, honestly. No, it's asked of us on the path. So when we run around and we're confused and we're angry and annoyed, we don't perceive the source of that anger as being in our mind. We don't perceive that we caused that ourselves. We don't perceive that as our own ego identification. So we see it outside of us. And what we do is rather than going to work in our own mind, which is what we need to do, because it's our own ego identification that's caused this discomfort in the first place. We try to make different arrangements with the world. We try to organize, orchestrate, manipulate, and control. We become intense control freaks and try to order all compound phenomena, all of it. And we do this in an exhausting and ultimately insane attempt to solve the problem where it is not. We're looking in the wrong place when we attempt to orchestrate all phenomena. The answer to our suffering is not out there because there is nothing out there. Nothing out there. There is nothing outside of you. So, because there's nothing outside of us, that's where we look, is inside of us, in the mind. Now, we're told here in many places, in fact, it's a theme that runs throughout A Course in Miracles, that the only thing that can even be said to be real in this wild world, the spinning ball of rock, this giant, giant spherical illusion, the only thing that can even be said to be real are our loving thoughts. So, if only our loving thoughts are real, then the real world, the forgiven world, is in our mind. Very important. If the only thing in this world that's real are our loving thoughts, it's in our mind. The real world is in our mind. It's in your mind. It's in your mind. It's a very, very important point that, again, there is nothing outside you. So, what we're experiencing here as we identify with an ego, as we're blissfully high 1 minute, DTing the next, in a manner of speaking, we're up, down, up, down. When we experience all of this wild roller coaster ride, what's going on is our mind is split. The mind can't handle the abject contradiction between truth and illusion. Our loving thoughts are in our mind, our deluded thoughts are in our mind. It's in our mind, and our mind can't handle the conflict between truth and illusion, which of course is no conflict at all, because truth is true, illusion is nothing. Yet, identifying with an ego, we experience this split, the highs and lows, and we can't handle it. So we project the illusion outward. We get rid of it. This is psychological projection. This is what happens when we lash out. We can't stand our feelings of hatred, of blame, guilt, anger, abject rage, so we project it. It's someone else's fault. It's something else's fault. It's the weather's fault. It's the government's fault. That's a big one, isn't it? It's another political party's fault. It's our ex's fault, right? It's our spouse's fault. It's somebody else's fault. We project this outward because we cannot handle this internal conflict. So, what becomes of everything that we project outward? Well, it looks like this, looks like this, looks like all of the phenomena that we appear to see with the body's eyes, that we appear to touch with the body's sensory organs, etc., etc., becomes the world that we mistake for our reality. In fact, it's a projection. Mm. We don't learn that in school growing up. Or if you did, wow, cool. Because most of us did not. I certainly didn't. So, what's important to realize here is that in order to rid ourselves of hatred, we've got to realize it's in our mind. It's not being foisted on us by something out there. Because even if something appears to be out there, like the government, like the weather, it's not out there. There is nothing out there. There is no one out there. There is no separation of any kind. So there cannot be a division between one person and another, between me and you. There is no division, no separation, period. It's in our mind. Our loving thoughts are in our mind, and our hateful thoughts are in our mind as well. We deep down all want to do away with and be free from the hateful thoughts. That's why we're on the spiritual path. Really, it is. It's why we're interested in this material, because clearly we wouldn't be if we didn't deep down know that there is only perfect oneness. What's going on here is you've heard the call of our inner teacher. So, who's that? What's that? Well, the inner teacher here that I'm referring to is known as the Holy Spirit in A Course in Miracles, and many other names at that. The Answer with a capital A, the Voice for God, which is perhaps the most common term that describes the Holy Spirit. What is it? Well, it's not a person, even though we frequently use he, him, the masculine pronouns. That's simply a convention of speech. The Holy Spirit's not a person. It's not a dude. It's not a lady. The Holy Spirit is part of our mind. That part of our mind that knows, just knows truth, that knows who and what we are, and will speak to us of this if only we allow it to do so, which is what we're all invited to do. And then relax and trust in our inner teacher's guidance. So you may call your inner teacher whatever you like. If you prefer to think of our inner teacher as Mike, Elvis, Sue, Betty, they're all just names. You may call our inner teacher your guides, plural, if you want to. It's all just a name, a symbol. Let's think about it. A name is not who we really are. It's symbolic. So we all want the peace of God. For this, there's a constant demand, whether we consciously recognize it or not. We all want the peace of God. Now, are you willing to raise this to a fully conscious, moment to moment conscious belief, statement, wish, want? Are you willing to hold this firmly and front and center in your mind? I want the peace of God. Because the more you do, the more you'll realize what the Course instructs us, and that is to want the peace of God and nothing else. You want to know why and nothing else? There is nothing else. So, if you're new, again, welcome. You'll have noticed that this course is very deep. You deserve nothing less. We've all wasted plenty of time on shallow, haven't we? So, to the extent that you're done with shallow and want deep, to the extent that you're done with ego identification and want the peace of God, excellent welcome. Your comments and questions are always most welcome here. My aim in offering these videos, which I shoot and record several times a week, is just to serve as a guide to share the Holy Spirit with you. And these videos are meant as a supplement to your own learning, your own study and practice of this course. They are in no way intended to be a substitute for your own learning, and under no circumstance should they ever be considered a substitute for your own practical application of these ideas, because this is a self-study curriculum. There is no hierarchy here. There is no great leader, cult leader. This is not a religion. It's not a cult, which is excellent because the world doesn't need another one of those, does it? The beauty of this is that it is self-study, and we learn by putting this into practice. It's about our practical, moment-to-moment practical application, which is very cool because that's how we prove to ourselves that these ideas are true. That's how we prove to ourselves the idea that it's all in our mind. There's nothing outside you. Prove that to yourself by putting these ideas into practice. Comments and questions are bound to arise along the way, and to the extent that you have them, I'm more than happy to entertain them here. We have a number of excellent discussions right here on this forum and YouTube. So if you've not yet subscribed, please do so. I'd love to have you join us. The subscription arrow is here. That's the prompt. And when you click that, when you hover over that, you'll be invited to subscribe. And that's the button that you click. So we'd love to have you join us. Now, in the coming year, my wife Cindy and I are putting together talks, workshops, and at least one Course in Miracles themed retreat where the plan is to have one-on-one or group access live and in person and in real time. We'll be doing these virtually and in person. So I want to invite you to stay tuned for details. That is all coming. The only thing I'll say about a retreat environment that I know some of you may have experienced more than once, is that it's a profound gift to give yourself to take time out of your social media feed, right, of your busy life, and focus inward. Because we're invited to do that, and we can, in fact, do that at all times. But life is very distracting. It spins at a high rate of speed, especially here in the 21st century with all of our modern technology. Well, we're making use of that right here. So that's good. But to the extent that you feel overwhelmed, that's something that happens a lot. So I invite you to continue to study and practice this material and to ask any questions if you've got them, because I'm here to help. All right. Thank you for joining me. Talk to you soon.